Daniel, Man of Courage, Part 1. This is a story of human heroism, of a man who stood in deadly danger and never retreated, a man who found his strength in the mighty power of God. From the pages of the Holy Bible come the story of Daniel, an exile in Babylonia, a young Hebrew living in the king's household. It is the account of a man who had looked into the eyes of God and who found there a courageous faith that has made his name a legend among men. The book of Daniel in the Old Testament tells this story. Often called a book of prophecy, it is also thought as an allegory, a parable, first told in a time of national crisis when a nation waited in mortal danger for a terrible retribution. It is a story that takes us back through the centuries to the days of Alexander the Great. This mighty military genius had swept across the known world like a great fire, conquering first, then establishing Greek culture and customs wherever he went. After Alexander's death in 323 BC, his empire was torn apart and finally emerged into four great kingdoms. The Hebrews and the little land of Judah were a tiny part of that large kingdom of Syria. The Syrian monarch of Greek lineage was determined to unify his kingdom by wiping out all peculiar customs and religions in all parts of his domain. Accordingly, he issued an edict. Even as a Syrian officer read the royal proclamation in the holy city of Jerusalem, there was installed a Syrian garrison. The city walls were torn down, the sacred Jewish scriptures were burned, the temple looted, a pagan altar erected. Swine were laid upon the shrines to desecrate them. Hear now the word of Antiochus the king. All men henceforth will worship the idol of Zeus. No longer will the Jewish Sabbath be kept, and the penalty for disobedience is death. Jews moved swiftly in all parts of Judah, smashing pagan idols and altars, killing Syrian soldiers, a desperate people in revolt, and under the leadership of Judas Maccabeus, the tiny Hebrew nation defied its Syrian king. Finally, Jerusalem itself was invaded by the Jews, the Syrian garrison slain, and the holy temple cleansed. The revolt had been successful for a moment, but what about the future? As the war fever waned, a sobered people realized that the king would send great armies to exact a terrible vengeance. It was then that a man was inspired to write a book, which would be read everywhere within the nation, which would add might to their arms, put courage in their hearts, and set their faces steadfast to the future. It was a book that would tell them of a time 500 years before, when men loyal to God had braved similar dangers and had been triumphant. It was the book of Daniel, and this is the story. In the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, ruler of Babylon, conquered Jerusalem and carried the best of Hebrew nation into exile in distant Babylonia. Among the captives were four young and courageous men whose names were to make history: Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. After arrival in Babylon, these four youths were taken into the royal palace of the Babylonian emperor, there to be trained with other young men as pages to serve in the presence of the king. Their training was to last for 3 years, during which time they were to eat of the same rich food and wine placed on the king's table. These were Jewish lads in a pagan land, living in an ungodly court, served food which their religion said was unclean, being taught heathen wisdom and trained to the service of a pagan king. But they resolved that they would not defile themselves by eating food forbidden by their religion. So Daniel, as their spokesman, appealed to the chief of the household. "Sir, since you are a steward of the king's household, have compassion upon us. Our God has forbidden us to eat of certain foods. Now give us permission to refuse this bounty from the king's table." But the steward shook his head in refusal as he replied, "I would like to do as you ask, Daniel, but if your health should fail, the king would kill me." But Daniel pled for a trial, a test. "Steward, try us for 10 days. Let us drink and eat only water and vegetables. Then compare us with those who have eaten the rich foods from the king's table, and see if we are not healthier than they." Hesitantly, the steward agreed and granted their request. And when 10 days had passed, God rewarded their loyalty by making them strong and healthy, and they were no longer required to eat of the unclean foods. 3 years later, all the young men who served as pages were summoned into the courtroom, there to be questioned by Nebuchadnezzar himself, and the 4 young Hebrews were found to be the wisest of the group. In pleased words, the king said, "Daniel, you and your companions are wise beyond your years. From this day forth you shall stand among my counselors." Then one night the king slept a troubled sleep. Fearful dreams haunted the darkness, and when he awakened he was bathed in the sweat of fear. But he could not remember the dream which had tormented him. Ascending his throne, he quickly summoned the oldest of his counselors and the astrologers and magicians of his court, and demanded, "Tell me the dream that tortured my sleep last night, and tell me what it means." "Tell us, your majesty, what the dream was, and we will interpret it for you." "No, you are my wise men. Tell me what I dreamed, or you shall die." "Sire, you ask the impossible. No man of human flesh can see the dreams within the sleeping brain. Only the gods can do that. There is not a man on earth who can meet your demand. Then you and all my counselors shall die." "Hebrews, prepare yourselves for death." The king's astrologers were unable to tell him what he dreamed, and in anger the king has decreed that all his counselors must die. But Daniel said, "But surely this sentence does not include us. We are not of your people. We are Jews, and we were not even in the courtroom. Do you expect justice from any angry and frightened king? He said all his counselors shall die, and that includes you." In this crisis of danger, these children of the Almighty turned again to their God for strength and help. Through the long hours of the night they knelt in prayer, and in the stillness of the dawn, God revealed the dream of the king in vision. And in the morning Daniel stood before the king and said, "Sire, no man has been able to reveal the content of your dream, but there is a God in heaven who knows, and he has revealed it to me. As you lay sleeping, you saw visions of the future, and in your dreams God allowed you to see the latter days. You saw a great image, mighty and frightful, made of gold and silver and bronze and iron and clay. And you saw it smashed with a stone, ground to dust and carried away by the wind. But the stone grew into a great mountain and filled the earth. Your Majesty, this image which you saw in your dream represents your kingdom, which shall be followed by 3 other great empires. Then they shall be destroyed by a kingdom that shall be eternal. God has revealed it so." Then the king stepped down from the throne and knelt before Daniel, saying, "Truly your God is a God of gods and a Lord of lords, for you have revealed the mystery of my dream. Unto you I shall give high honors. Under me you shall be given authority to rule the empire of Babylon, and your friends shall be as princes within my kingdom." But success and honor were only preludes to further testing of the faith of God's champions in this pagan land. For one day Nebuchadnezzar, inflamed with power, intoxicated with the knowledge that he was the world's greatest monarch, decided to proclaim himself a divine figure, to be worshipped as a god. So a great golden statue of himself, 90 feet tall and 9 feet in breadth, was erected on the plain of Dura. and all officials and people were summoned to come and stand before it. Hear ye, hear ye! There shall be a great sound of music, and when you hear the notes of the trumpets, you shall all fall to the ground and worship the golden image of the mighty Nebuchadnezzar. And he who does not bow down shall be thrown alive into a blazing furnace. As the herald's words ended, a blast of the trumpets shattered the air. The vast multitudes bowed in obedience, all except 3 men who stood as tall and erect as the great cedars of Lebanon. They were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the sons of Israel who would not bow down except to the one Almighty God. Certain Babylonian officials, already jealous of the honors given these despised foreigners, were quick to see their defiance. When the signal was given to arise, they hastened to Nebuchadnezzar and cried, "O mighty king, you made a decree that at the trumpet sound all should bow down or die. Now, O king, it is our unpleasant but necessary duty to tell you that the 3 Jews whom you have made princes have arrogantly defied you. These same men who in the past have refused to worship the ancient gods of Babylon have now refused to bow down and worship before your image." In anger, Nebuchadnezzar ordered the 3 Hebrews brought before him. "Is it true that you whom I have treated so well have neither gratitude for my kindness nor fear of my power? Another chance I shall give you. Once more the trumpet shall sound. This time bow in reverence before my image, or die in the fiery furnace." But the Hebrews answered in quiet courage, "Your Majesty, do not waste the time of your trumpeters. We have no intention of bowing before your statue. You may throw us into the furnace. But know this, O king, even there our God will protect us." Then there was a moment of strange silence, as the 3 men looked at each other in fearful consternation, remembering that in the long history of their religion, God had not always saved the lives of his servants. But with heads erect, they again faced the king and spoke. First Shadrach, "Your Majesty, it may be in your power to kill us, but there are things worse than death. Now hear our words. Even if the Lord does not protect us, we trust him. We still will not bow down." The king's rage was so great that his voice trembled as he shouted to his guards, "Heat the furnace 7 times hotter than ever before. Bind these arrogant fools and take them to the fire. Their God cannot help them now." Nearby stood a large oven-like kiln where bricks were baked, glowing white with intense heat. And into the searing, consuming fire, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrust. Some time later, the king ordered a guardsman to open the furnace door so that he might look within. After a moment, he turned to his counselors and exclaimed in amazement, "An hour ago we thrust 3 men into that fire, but now there are 4 men in there, and one looked like an angel." Then turning again toward the furnace, the king called, "Men of Israel, if you are still alive, come forth and stand before me." And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walked out of the fire unharmed. Then the king spoke to the awed crowd. "Blessed be the God of these men. They trusted him and he protected them. Now I decree that no one within my empire shall speak evilly of the God of Israel, for there is no other God on earth who can give such deliverance to those who serve him." 7 years went by, and Daniel retained his position as chief counselor in the service of the king, and the country prospered under his direction. Then again, one night Nebuchadnezzar dreamed another terrible dream that left him terror-stricken. He rushed from his bedroom to find the wise Daniel. "O Daniel, this night in a dream I saw a mighty tree grow in the center of the earth, and it grew until it seemed to fill the earth and sky. Then an angel from heaven cried, 'Cut down the tree and strip off its branches.' Then it seemed like I saw myself, like a crazed animal among wild beasts. Daniel, tell me what it means." "Sire, the meaning of this dream shall be bitter unto you, but it shall teach you that God rules the kingdom of men, and it gives to whom he wills. The dream is this: The mighty tree is you, your majesty, whose dominion reaches the ends of the earth. But this great tree shall be destroyed, and you shall become a madman and run in the wilds like a crazed beast, and eat grass like an oxen. Why must this happen to me, Daniel? Is there no way to avoid this doom? If you cease your sins and your iniquities, if you practice righteousness and show mercy to the oppressed, perhaps then the judgment may be delayed. Be humble and know that the Most High God rules the world. But the king could not be humble. Standing on a palace rooftop, he looked out over Babylon, greatest city of the world, and he thought to himself, "This is my mighty Babylon, which I have built by my own power and my own wealth, that it may be my own residence and a monument to the glory of my majesty." And in that hour the heavens pronounced their judgment, and the king became crazed. And he ran through the fields like a wild animal, and 7 years passed before his madness left him. Then one day his reason returned, and coming to his senses he knelt in the field and acknowledged the majesty of God. "I honor thee, O Lord of heavens, for thy works are right and thy ways are just. And I have learned now that thou art able to abase and humble those who walk in pride." And the curtain comes down on the first half of the drama of Daniel, man of courage and champion of God. This ends this tape. Please rewind it to the very beginning.